evening, everybody, and welcome to Monday Smash here on WarchantTV. My name is Tom Lang, the director of original content here at WarchantTV and Warchant.com, and you are looking at new footage, everybody. This is footage of today's first spring practice, over 13 minutes of it available on WarchantTV, but we're going to have that for you right here as we welcome you in to our live reaction. We'll be joined in just a moment from day one at the practice fields by our own managing editor, Ira Schoffel. And then our own Jeff Cameron as well will stop by in about 20 minutes to talk about what they saw, their individual reactions and their takeaways from day one of spring practice. So taking some of these newcomers, some of the veterans that have gotten 1 year older and stronger in the weight and conditioning program, give us some thoughts on what you see in the comments section. If you have any questions, we'll try to get those answered as well. We are so thrilled that you're here with us on Warchant TV. If you can, like this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't. It's absolutely free. And don't forget, Warchant.com is running a special for this week only at the outset of spring camp. Just $10 for 4 months of Warchant.com. So head over to the website right now. If you haven't signed up, $10 gets you through spring practice, spring and summer recruiting updates, and on the eve of the 2023 season. We will start with some breaking news as we await our own managing editor, Ira Schoffel, and I've wiped it across the bottom of the screen. 5 Seminoles will miss spring practice. Mike Norvell announces to the media before his press conference tonight that offensive lineman Robert Scott, big-time name there. Wide receiver Micah Pittman, also a very important name. Defensive interior lineman Malcolm Ray, nickelback and corner Kevin Noles, and defensive end Aaron Hester will all miss spring practice. There will be some other players who are limited moving forward, but those are the 5 names that will not participate in spring. Guys, I'll give you full disclosure. I was not out there at the practice fields today. I will be getting information just as you are when our own staff members stop by. So it'll be interesting to see. But I did note, and I'm sure you all did as well, if you stopped by warchant.com or took a look at the roster of FSU this spring, that Robert Scott had lost an awful lot of weight, 20 plus pounds from the fall into the spring. He's listed at just over 300 pounds for the spring. So he will not be available, and that makes it all the more interesting as FSU is going to be sorting out who their starting 5 offensive linemen are in spring camp moving forward. They've got a lot more options at offensive line, and that's something that you're going to see on this video as it matriculates down. In fact, there it goes. Our own Aslan Hajavandi did a wonderful job today getting all of these clips. There you see number 63 on the left in Jeremiah Byers. Bless Harris, number 58, is back. Pivoting back and forth. It's a chaotic start to practice every day on the fields, but it's organized. As you see Jordan Travis making throws, there's Jeremiah Byers. You'll see in a little bit somebody who really stood out to me at number 78, Daughtry Richardson, who has put in a lot of work in the gym. Keandre Jones, number 75, is there as well. A lot of newcomers. There he is. Look at Daughtry Richardson. Look at the size of that redshirt freshman. Outstanding stuff. Going to be a battle for the starting 2 tackle positions in spring, and we'll see if that momentum carries over into the fall. As we are joined now, field side, by our managing editor, Ira Schoffel, who has just canvassed Mike Norvell's first appearance of spring practice. They had player interviews as well with Jordan Travis, Trey Benson, Jared Verse, among others. Ira, how's it going tonight?
Good, Tom. How you doing, man? It's a little timing's a little tricky because we just finished out there, uploaded those videos, and now glad to be talking to you, buddy.
Well, you broke it. It's on the boards at warchant.com right now. I have it on the lower third that 5 players will be out for the balance of spring. Can you take us through, what you know beyond the names and how that was brought about, that update tonight?
Yeah, Coach Norvell told us, I think on Friday, that he would let us know if there were some guys that aren't going to be able to participate all spring. And true to his word, he told us today before we actually started the interviews that those 5, and he also, he's always very careful about violating students' privacy rights. And if a player doesn't want their injury information, a lot of times people will ask, like, why won't he tell you the injury information? Well, if they have their own right to privacy. And so those players were willing to have that information be shared. And it's mostly veterans. Robert Scott's a guy, he's going on year 5 or year 6 here. He's been in the program a long time. I don't think spring practice is a huge deal for him. Same thing with Micah Pittman. Kevin Noles, has played a lot of football. He started for 2 years. Aaron Hester is probably one of the few young guys that You'd like to see him get as much playing time as he can because he is a young player. But for the most part, it's older guys that you're not too concerned about. They're probably rehabbing some sort of procedure.
Chris asks in the chat, Ira, were you told the type of injuries? I don't think that's typically the case, but I figure I'll ask and bring it to the table.
Yeah, under Mike Norvell, he almost never will share that information. And the only way we really ever report it is kind of the agreement that goes into us being able to watch practice. Again, for people who don't know, probably 99% of college football coaches don't let the media in their practices. So the one condition for Mike Norvell is I'm going to let you in practice, but I don't want you to report injury information specifically if I don't say it on the record. And so that's one of those things he doesn't like to share. Now, if we get to the spring game and there's a guy on the sideline and he's got his leg wrapped up, or if he's got his arm in a sling, then that's a little bit different. But for right now, yeah, we can't detail the extent of them. Baby.
So that's there's a Go Noles in the background there. This is live television. Ira, that's very newsworthy. It's going to be, something that we break down and talk about on Warchant TV for days to come here with those 5 players not being available. But what else jumped out to you? Talk to me about the news. What was newsworthy today, and what were the sights and the sounds like for the first spring practice of 2023?
Like we expected, it was going to be hard to get a ton of great insight about the newcomers because it was a day in shorts, no pads at all, not even shoulder pads, just shorts and helmets and jerseys. So there wasn't a lot of great competition, but there was some pretty good competition between the quarterbacks, receivers, and the defensive backs, running backs, tight ends. So we did have a little bit of some one-on-one competition with, Fentrell Cypress is a guy that stood out for sure. The cornerback transfer from Virginia came in and really made some nice plays, some really impressive pass breakups. Of the young receivers, I thought Vandravius Jacobs looked really. You could definitely see the speed, and Mike Norvell talked about him after the practice that that speed definitely translates. It's hard to say a whole lot about the linemen because they were mostly working on mental reps, mental assignments, some blocking scheme things. So you can see what we saw at the tour of duty, that a guy like Casey Roddick and Jeremiah Byers, and those guys are really nimble for their size. But we didn't get to see them really block anybody. They did do some pass rushing drills at the end of practice, but the defensive ends kind of wore out the offensive tackles because the offensive tackles don't have anything to grab onto. So it's tough for the offensive linemen in that drill, Jared Verse and Gilbert Edmond, and I think, the freshman, defensive end. You're
talking about Lamar Green?
Yeah, Lamar Green flashed in that. But again, it's hard for the offensive linemen in those drills. So, and then we got to see Brock Glenn at quarterback. Mike Norvell said that early on in practice, it looked like Brock Glenn was maybe trying to aim the ball a little bit. And Norvell said that he was one of the guys, and there were a few of the freshmen that you could tell were kind of getting anxious. It's their first practice in college. They're throwing a lot at him. And so early on in practice, he looked like he was a little tentative throwing the ball. But as it went on, he started cutting loose a little bit and made some really nice throws. Jaheim Bell was really impressive, as you'd expect. I mean, he looks the part, made some really nice catches. I thought Morlock, the other transfer tight end, looked good in some drills, didn't seem quite as natural as a receiver as Jaheim Bell. Jaheim Bell just looked special.
Well, let me ask you this, Ira. Last fall, we were struck that early on in camp, basically the first practice, because they had so many guys that were held over from spring, a lot of early enrollees the previous camp, they just hit the ground running, full speed ahead. Did you sense that again today, even though they have some early enrollees and transfers, that the pace of practice was kind of like, something you would see in mid-camp, or did they take it a little bit easier today to get acclimated?
No, I thought the pace was good. But, and they do have 4 quarterbacks. So they were getting all the quarterbacks reps. AJ Duffy and Brock Glenn got a lot of reps. Tate Rodemaker, I thought, looked really good. And Jordan Travis obviously looked really good. Jordan looked very, very sharp, looked like season form. Tate did too. And the younger 2 quarterbacks a little bit behind, but they got those guys a lot of reps. They really got the receivers a lot of reps. You saw guys like Winston Wright, who didn't really do a whole lot full speed last year. We got to see him go full speed. And they just didn't do a lot of team stuff. So the tempo was quick. They knew what they were doing for the most part. But they had the offensive linemen kind of by themselves a lot. They had the defensive linemen by themselves a lot. They had the quarterbacks working with the receivers and tight ends a good bit. But it was not a lot of. There was probably a couple of teams There's probably about 2 or 3 periods of 7-on-7 and maybe 1 or 2 of 11-on-11. For the most part, it was pretty basic, just working on drills. So there wasn't a lot of great 11-on-11 team stuff.
Austin in the chat is wondering who's the most vocal of the newcomers, either freshman or a transfer. Anybody make their presence known out there today that jumped out to you?
It's funny. Jared Verse talked about it. People watched the Jared Verse video. He said that Jeremiah Byers, the new offensive lineman who transferred in from UTEP, is very vocal. He said he talks more than Jared does, which I don't know that I believe.
No.
But he's the guy that was talking a lot. It was good to see, Darius Washington is not a new guy, but it was good to see him kind of with Robert Scott unavailable. And some of those older guys from last year, you think back to last year, they had Dimitri Emanuel, who was a really good leader for that group. And they had some older offensive lineman, Caden Lyles and Jackson Turnitine. Now Darius Washington's one of the older guys, so it was kind of cool to see him be a little bit more vocal as a leader of the offensive line group. Otherwise, no, I didn't see a ton of guys talking among the newcomers, but Jeremiah Byers apparently got Jared Verse's respect.
Well, that's interesting early on for sure. They'll be going if Byers cross trains at tackle, they'll certainly have a few head up matchups as this goes along. Ira, anything stand out from the 3 players that they spoke to? You just mentioned what Jared Verse said about Byers, but Jordan Travis was available to the media. Trey Benson was. These are all videos that you can watch in their entirety on Warchant TV. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for great content like this. It's absolutely free. But anything from the press conferences themselves that stood out to you?
Mostly there's a lot of talk about expectations and how they're handling them, and the fact that, again, like kind of echoing what Coach Norvell and the assistant coaches said to us last week, that they're embracing them, but they're not worried about them because they feel like their expectations were already really high. I did talk to Trey Benson a good bit. When we split up in interviews, I got Trey Benson, and he was pretty good, man. He was talking about the tough love he's been getting from Coach Yak, David Johnson, that David Johnson's been sitting him down and showing him footage from last year. And I think he said it was probably over 400 yards that he left out there on the field last year. And he said that, the 2 big things were, one, not trusting his speed, not realizing sometimes he could have got to that edge and just kind of hanging tight with the blockers and not letting loose earlier in some runs. And then also not running like a big back. And, he said that, he's always been a bigger back, but earlier in his high school career, he never had to run like a big back because he always just outran everybody. So he talked about that being a big emphasis right now. He really had a lot of good things to say about Rodney Hill and the redshirt freshman running back, and also Keziah Holmes, just about, Keziah, just the confidence he brings and, his work ethic. And you could see it. We got to see Keziah Holmes make some plays today. He's an impressive addition to that room. And then Rodney Hill, just again, every time, just like last year we saw him, every time you see him, he looks like he's shot out of a cannon. And, one of the things that Benson said was that he's just not second guessing himself anymore. He said last year, if there was one thing Rodney Hill did wrong, it was that sometimes he would think a little bit and he would second guess himself on some things. But now he has confidence in what he's doing, and you really see that speed. And it's pretty electric, man. That backfield's impressive.
So there are a lot of position battles across the board, Ira, on both sides of the football. But in one other phase of special teams, the kicker battle really has people wondering. And just, I think it's something that we're going to have to make sure is a note each day as we do our observations on warchant.com and on the boards. But we're getting questions. Octavio is not alone. How did the kicker situation look today, Ira? So did you get a chance to see? We're rolling the footage right now of a Keltner versus Fitzy day one. What was your impression, if any, from day one of practice?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be decided anytime soon, first of all. I don't know that it's going to be decided this spring, but certainly not going to be decided in the first day or two. But when they went out on the field, they do some kicking, what you're seeing inside in the indoor practice facility at the beginning of practice. Then they go out on the field, and the one period where they got live kicks, sort of live kicks, was I think Fitzgerald hit both of his, and I think Keltner made the first one was awesome. It went up on the top of the indoor practice facility. Second one looked like he got under it a little bit, and I think he missed it wide right. So the official count today was 2 for 2 for Fitzy and 1 for 2 for Keltner, but I don't think that that's going to be decided anytime soon.
All right, Ira. So I know your arm's probably getting tired as you're propping up and you're right outside the field. I want to ask you, as we preview what's to come here on the site and on the channel for the next 12 to 24 hours, what can people expect, and any other final thoughts that you want to mention as you get your first day of spring practice in the books?
Yeah, as far as coverage wise, we'll have observations coming. We took some statistics, from loose statistics from, the 1-on-1s and some of the 7-on-7s. And, so we'll have a good breakdown of which, receivers had good days, which DBs had nice days, quarterbacks. And then we'll have coverage, as you said, the interviews we got to do after practice. So those will be coming as well. Those are already on the YouTube channel, but we'll have stories off of those as well. Other observations, really, I think the biggest thing to me was just the anticipation's only building really for me, because the biggest thing I think a lot of us wanted to see was the improved size and strength on the offensive line and defensive line, and that's there. There's no question about it. You can see it. We got to see Daryl Jackson today. We got to see some of the other guys. Braden Fisk was a little bit kind of in and out of things, but looking at him physically, it's what you expected. Daryl Jackson certainly is, and so but one, just again, it's like, we've been waiting for this spring because we want to see how these newcomers match up against the veterans, and now we're out here, but we're still not seeing it because they're not in full pad yet. So maybe we'll see some of that on Friday. There's another practice on Wednesday, and then they'll break for spring break, and then we'll get really into the heart of spring practice after that. So it's just good to be back out here. But the I think the main course for this spring is going to be that line competition, and we're going to have to wait a few more days for that.
Dipping into the kiddie pool from the spring practice fields and the practice facility. He's Ira Schoffel, the managing editor of Warchant.com. Thank you, Ira. Hopefully you get some decent rest after being out in the heat for a couple hours today.
Enjoy it. Enjoy the rest of the show. Say hey to Jeff for me.
I certainly will. You can too, because here he is right now, the host of the wildly popular Jeff Cameron Show, standing outside, it looks like, of Doak Campbell Stadium. What's up, partner? It's Jeff Cameron after day one of practice. How's it going, brother?
Going great. It was going great. I was just sitting there listening to you two guys, and obviously I was able to stand with my cohort there, Ira Schoffel and Corey Clark and Aslan, everybody out here. It was a good time. So, I echo Ira's sentiments in the sense that it was really good to be out here to watch practice and hit the ground running. Mike talked about the speed with which they practice. I think that is apt. I think that's right. There was a lot of energy. You have so many veterans, Tom, you just assume they're going to hit the ground running like that. And they did. And I think what it leads to in some regards is basically you got some young kids that are swimming. You've got some young kids that are being asked to step right in and rep in the same kind of speed as the veterans. And some of them look a little bit like they're in over their head, but it's day one. I can only imagine what it's like. For example, if you're Brock Glenn, you're 17 years old or whatever, you're supposed to be in high school. You come out here, you got three people ahead of you, most of whom are veterans, obviously, and you're going to look a little lost. But I thought he started to get into the swing of things in the second half of practice and just really kind of let it loose a little bit. So that was fun to see. And then, of course, the sheer athleticism, Tom, I think that's the big thing. He's really flipped this roster, whether we're talking about the size of the offensive line, the size of the defensive line, and the numbers that they have now, but also the overall athleticism that you continue to see this roster infused with. It's why there's expectations. It's why everybody's excited about the possibilities of this team being really, really good. And I can understand that.
There's a guy on the screen right now on the left, Jeff, and Daughtry Richardson. I'll back up the footage a little bit. And there's 13 plus minutes of it, everybody, on Warchant TV that you can find. After you're done watching this video, of course, hit the like button underneath the video. But Daughtry Richardson just jumped out to me, Jeff, in terms of the workout, the stuff he's done in the offseason to build his body. Yeah. That dude, I didn't notice him at the tour of duty because we were so concerned to see the newcomers and how they looked, and Byers and Casey Roddick and some of the other positions. But 78 and white today, I didn't know he put in that much work. Did he stand out to you like he did to me just from watching the video? I wasn't there. And if not, who else stood out to you? And as you're remarking on the athleticism has changed and the roster has flipped, what did you see?
Well, I think you could do that with a lot of the offensive linemen, Tom. Every day we're out here, I mean, whether that was the tour of duty or today, I really hyper-focused on this offensive line. I think that's an apt descriptor that you just threw out there. But, I find myself doing that with Roddick. I thought, Kenyatta Charlton he looks a lot better in terms of his weight. He's lost some of that excess weight. He's really quick. He's got great feet for a kid his size. I think you just continue to see that the competition there is going to be intense. I think it's a real good problem for Alex Atkins to have. I think he's going to, one thing when we had Alex on the show last week, he talked about this is a time for teaching. And when I really did spend a lot of time with the offensive line and the defensive line today, and you can really tell, like with some of the newcomers, a lot of work about hand placement, footwork, leverage, the kinds of things that he wants to see them do and have it become second nature, so that obviously when they get in the fall, they can start really worrying about plays and that kind of stuff. So right now, you can just tell he's spending a lot of time and there's a lot of intent there, really hyper-focusing on hand placement, leverage, obviously footwork. And so all those guys, he's got to feel like a kid in the candy store, I'll be honest with you. I mean, everywhere he looks, because there's guys we're not talking about that also look really good. I know I beat the drum all the time for Estes, but he's huge and he's moving really, really well. He's another guy with another option. And so I think that competition, I think Ira said it at the end of the video there, that competition in the fall or even when they start to go pads here is going to be so much fun to document, because there's a lot of talent there and a lot of guys who want to play.
So let me ask you this, in terms of the breakout of practice, because they've got more options on the lines. I know that they didn't have full pads on today, so there's a limit to what they can do, and they're just getting acclimated. Did you get a sense they're going to offer more wrinkles or simultaneous reps in practice versus previous camps? Or is it too early to tell and they were just going through their normal routine of stretching the IPF, break out, do individuals, and kind of, move back and forth as the day went along?
Yeah, it's a good question, Tom, but I think it is too early to tell. I don't want to make that that leap there. I'm sure it stands to reason, but we didn't see it today. Today was just really a lot of group work there when the offensive line came out of the IPF. Really, in that back right corner that we see when we're standing over at Hauser. So a lot of teaching. They don't have to. I'll tell you this. One of the things he wanted to see, and I think there's no doubt that he will see, there is no downtime. Like as soon as a rep ends, you got guys fighting to get back out there. Other guys who know that if they don't get in this rep, that somebody's going to jump them. So they're all trying to make that impression, and I saw that already.
You're watching Monday's Smash here on Warchant TV. To the 300 plus of you that are watching alongside Jeff Cameron outside of the practice fields in Doak Campbell Stadium, actually, to be precise. My name is Tom Lang. Thank you for being here. Hit the like button underneath the video. Subscribe to Warchant TV. It's absolutely free. We've got some breaking news. Mike Norvell addressed the media just before he went to his press conference that 5 Florida State Seminoles will not participate in spring practice. If you're, again, late to the party tonight, welcome in. Here's that news. Robert Scott, Micah Pittman, Malcolm Ray, Kevin Noles, and Aaron Hester are going to miss spring practice. There might be some others that are limited, but these are the 5 that are ruled out at the outset. Jeff, I talked to Ira about that to open the show, but I want to get your thoughts on those particular names and maybe what it does to ratchet up competition in some of these position groups in spring practice and spring camp.
Yeah, and I'll just say this without getting into too many details, because I don't want to get us in trouble right off the bat. Some of those guys were out here. Those guys, I don't want anybody thinking like, oh, there's something dire going on. I think just it's spring football, and in many cases you have veteran players who had to deal with some things last year. They had some things that they played through last year, and then maybe it's minor surgery, maybe I don't know, maybe it's maybe it's just rehabbing and getting stronger. So I don't want to make it sound as if like, oh gosh, those guys could be lost. I mean, those guys were out there, they were taking in mental reps. So you saw some guys that he mentioned. So I just to report that. Yeah, obviously it's a great opportunity. I mean, I think it's a great opportunity. If you're a player who's fighting for a position, for example, on that offensive line, well, if one of the presumed starters is not going to be out there, obviously that increases your reps and gives you opportunities to further impress the coaching staff. So, I mean, nobody roots for anybody to get hurt, especially not a teammate. But I think when it happens, you'd be a fool not to take advantage of the extra reps that you're going to get. So obviously, I think along that offensive line and defensive line with some of the guys you mentioned, I think a guy like you mentioned, Micah Pittman, Mike is going to play. Mike, I don't know that it's going to do much of anything for that receiving core. Some guys will get more reps and a chance to maybe turn some heads. But we all know Mike is going to play. He's too good a player. He does so many things really well, including blocking. He's physically tough, and he understands the offense. But just in terms of those extra opportunities, there's no doubt, man. That is the theme. You guys are going to be tired of hearing it. That is the theme of spring practice, is competition with an elevated roster, both in terms of talent, size, and the overall competition, without question.
So we usually do this, Jeff, when one of us isn't there at the practice fields, and it was killing me around 4:30, 4:45 today that I couldn't be there. Looking forward to getting out there on Wednesday. But we'll trade phone calls after we get out of practice and say, so fill me in. What did I miss? You've already gone through some of the headlines, but if it was just you and me on the phone getting ready for the show at 1 o'clock and you'll be live on Warchant TV tomorrow, 1 p.m. with Seminole headlines, what would you tell me, in that moment? Like, hey, man, if this guy looks good or this is what was happening, how would you sum it up in that kind of a way?
I would tell you that KJ Kirkland is really impressive, and that of the newcomers, man, that kid. And by the way, they changed his weight, Tom. I remember you and I looked at it, and they had originally said he was 180 or something like that. I think they list him now at 198. Yeah, that's a kid that, number 24. You guys should watch him. Also, Quindarius Jones looks really, really good. I like what the options are in the secondary and the competition there. And then I want to say this. I think it's interesting watching Jordan Travis look so at ease, as you would expect him to be, but he gets it, man. He looked really smooth today. Again, it's not, they're not in pads, but he played really well. He seems so at ease, and he's really almost looking inward. You can see he's trying to perfect technique, all the things that he's working on, whatever that might be. You could just see that focus of it's the little things now. I get the big picture. I get the offense. I know where I'm supposed to go with the football with the looks that I'm seeing. I understand the personnel, but I've got to get better at certain things. And you could see him working on that. And I love that. He spoke after practice, and Jordan talked a lot about this place and how much it means to him. This is his first spring practice. And you could see that I don't think he was nostalgic, but he kind of spoke in a way that showed that he had great reverence for the process. He's excited about where the team's at and what, some of the weapons that he has. He brought up Jaheim Bell, and I can see why. When you look at that guy, he's got NFL written all over him. He jumps incredibly well for a man his size. He brought up Kyle as well. I think he's really excited about the tight end room, and I don't know how he wouldn't be because Biscuit was great today too. So you got options now there, and that was good. But I thought he looked really poised and ready to go to work, really excited to go to work.
All right, last couple of things before we wrap up here on Monday Smash. A good question from Tomas in the chat, and he wants to know who are the first 5 guys off the bus. That's something you can tell without the full pads being on, is what guys look different. And I'm sure some of that is influenced by last Thursday being at the tour of duty. But now that you've seen them with the helmets on, who would be your candidates? I don't know. You could be 5, it could be 3. But first guys that you would send off the bus if it was Coach Cameron.
Well, even if it's funny, I say this because he's not a guy that you think of as a starter, but you would always have Steven Dix Jr. walk off the bus first.
Yeah.
He's a freak of nature, man. And then from there, I think if you're really wanting to look at an impressive athlete, when you stand next to Trey Benson, you know this, Tom. I mean, that's a big man.
Yep.
Running the football with those wheels. He wouldn't hurt to impress. I think there's several candidates. First of all, Darrell Jackson. Goodness gracious, that's a massive human being. He's going to play a lot. That's a different looking dude. And I would also say that any number of those offensive linemen that we've talked about would impress you. I can't get over how big Roddick's trunk is. Like, I don't know how anybody moves that guy. So maybe he would be a candidate, but really there are a lot of the offensive linemen that I would say, Byers looks like a guy that I would send out there. Several of those kinds of dudes. And then always Jared Verse. We know how big and strong Jared Verse is, and Jared was Jared. It's day one, and he was taking no prisoners and telling a lot of people about it. And it never stops. You can see sort of that look on the faces of some of the offensive linemen. It never stops. At the end of practice, he was challenging Jordan and Trey to a race.
Yeah.
So there's that. It's and when they didn't want to race because they were rightfully tired from practicing, he intimated they were soft and he'd get them later.
Well, he's doing that on social media too. It's a campaign. I think he's probably jealous of the FaceTime that Norvell gets when he races players after they get through their initial stretching. Anybody else that go ahead.
Mike was racing again today. I think he raced Patrick Payton at one point. He lost. But Mike was running. I was like, don't pull a hammy again, Mike. Don't pull a hammy. He looks like he's ready to go.
I think, we'll put the counter on that for like maybe another over under on 1.5 more camps. before that gets crazy, because we have footage of it. He's racing at least when they do the initial Dante Anderson.
Yeah, I saw that.
And Briggs, I think, as well. And that'll be on the screen here in a second for everybody to enjoy.
Let it
go. Anybody else that made their stamp on practice from a vocal standpoint? Jared Verse never takes any prisoners. But we had a question in the chat about any of the newcomers. Anybody who thought, oh, man, okay, he wants to let you know he's here.
Yeah, the newcomers were kind of just taking it in and trying to keep up. I think they were just trying to keep up. I don't think they had a lot of time to talk. I will say this, man. That running back room is so impressive. Every time you see one of those guys, you just think, oh, well, he's going to help. He's going to help. He's going to help. He's really good. Running back room's really good. I do think Jaheim Bell is a guy that is unafraid to be here. I think he almost walks around like he's assuming he's the guy to start. He's not giving off any indications that he's going to be a backup. He's kind of like, well, I don't know what you all are doing, but I'm going to be out here starting. So it's kind of funny to watch that. It's just an air about him, and he's forever repping, man. He's right back out there. So that's not surprising. I will say one thing to add to this, again, it's the first practice. They're not in pads. I don't want to overstate any one thing, but these just cursory glance, observations. Deuce Spann looks better, man. Deuce Spann looks like a guy who's a lot more comfortable. And really, like, I didn't see him, knock on wood, I didn't see him drop a pass today. He ran really smooth routes, made all the catches, had a couple big moments where you thought, oh, man, that's a really nice play. Again, this is back to that competition and options and different types of athletes, but Deuce is a special athlete.
Anybody in the linebacker room or the secondary stand out? There's a lot of offensive stuff, and we're going to have footage from each day, but we've got a lot of offensive video. Anything there, Fentrell Cypress or some of the linebackers who stood out to you?
Yeah, I wrote a bunch down here because I think, first of all, I mentioned Kirkland earlier. Cypress was great today. Cypress, I'd be stunned if Cypress didn't start in some capacity. He's so smooth, man. Looks like he's been doing it his whole life. Just very, very comfortable. I mentioned Jones already. I would say to you that Mike mentioned Duke Cooper, and he talked about Duke, making the transition to safety. They're gonna try both at corner and safety. They want him to continue to practice both. But I get the sense that he was really pleased today with how he looked at safety, and he looks bigger. And Mike said, so I can say this because you can see it in the video. Mike said after practice that Duke was dealing with a lot last year. He was dealing with some injuries, and he feels like some of those injuries led to a lack of confidence. Mm-hmm. And so it would help explain, because Duke wasn't good last year. He just wasn't. And we were all kind of scratching our head. Why wasn't he good? He looked so good as a freshman. What happened here? And I just don't know. I don't know what that injury was, but whatever it was, it didn't allow him to play with a lot of confidence, and it didn't allow him to play at 100%. And he kind of looked like a guy that wasn't playing at 100%. He didn't look like that today. He looked free and easy and able to run. And the fact that Mike brought it up tells you a lot about that kid was trying to play through something last year. And I think somewhere along the way, because he couldn't be what he once was, it affected his confidence. So that was good to see. I'm happy for him.
All right, I mean it this time. Here's the last question. Somebody asked something akin to this, but I'll change the question a little bit. If you were comparing this roster that you watched today to a group from the last decade, so that could be anywhere from the 2010 first Jimbo season through 2019 when it got really ugly. Pick a season and tell me this group looks like that year's roster, just to give people a sense. Go ahead.
2012-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, 2012-ish. Like, I think we thought that team could win the national championship, and came up, short, obviously. But it wasn't nothing. They had a lot of talent. They went on to win the Orange Bowl, and they looked good at times. I think this roster is not 2013's roster, but it's a roster that deserves high expectations. The fan base, you and me even, are going to debate what that is specifically. But it's a roster that I think rightfully you should think has a chance, certainly, to wrestle away the ACC title from Clemson. And, if you're good enough to do that, you might be in the college football playoff. So I would say that is a reasonable expectation.
Yeah, Khalil Young says that's lofty. That's some lofty praise. And,
again, offensive line, man, the offensive line is so much better. And if you're going to control the line of scrimmage with a veteran quarterback who's very comfortable, who now has real options both at the wide receiver position, but now tight end as well. Don't forget, Jordan's allowed to run. He's got running backs. They're going to score a ton of points. And I love the interior of this defensive line. I think when all those guys are healthy and everybody's out there, you're going to see that that's the best depth they've had in a long time. So if you're winning in the trenches, you're in a position to win every game. There's some unanswered questions. I don't think they're elite at linebacker at all. I think they're just okay at linebacker, but they're experienced. And I think you're going to, obviously we'll monitor the secondary quite a bit because they've got options there and they got a lot of guys kind of cross-training, and there's some guys with a lot of experience, so it should be interesting.
A lot of Orange Theory that you do in your spare time. How's your arm holding up from all the Orange Theory? Is the phone getting heavy?
It's good. It's rock solid, buddy. Anything else? Bring it. Come on. You got more questions? Let's go.
What popped into your mind in the last 2 minutes as you were talking? Is there anything else? I mean, because sometimes, when we talk, we're very stream of consciousness. Like, oh, and this guy looked good. I'll give you maybe one more softball, which is Patrick Surtain. Patrick Surtain. Did you notice anything about him being one of the new on-field coaches today?
No.
No? Really?
No,
Okay.
no, didn't notice anything. I say that because some of those drills that I watched with them, I was at a distance. So I really couldn't hear what he was saying. I mean, obviously, all these coaches are active. All these guys are getting after it. All these guys are preaching the same sort of thing that Mike Norvell starts at the top. They're all on the same page. I'll tell you something. Here you go. Here's something for you. Chris Thompson has been re-energized. He's got some toys to work with now, and he's not afraid. I heard Chris Thompson get more animated today than I've heard in a while, and I mean that in a good way. Like he knows he's got something, and he wants to get it right in a hurry. And so he wasn't afraid to get after some guys today in a good way, though, because I think he knows they got a chance to be good.
There's no better sportsman in the world than Jeff Cameron. He's right in front of the sportsmanship statue outside of Doe Camp.
I don't know about that.
He'll be live tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here on Warchant TV. You did the stand-up as well post-practice. Is that right?
I did, yeah.
So if you want to hear some of the same thoughts and some other ones, Corey Clark was with you?
Yep.
Jeff and Corey on Warchant TV with a wrap-up as well as all the coverage we have. Jeff, appreciate it, my brother. I will catch you tomorrow at some point.
Absolutely. Good times. Good to be back out here. It's fun talking to you. And, yes, I'll see you tomorrow. And be well, everybody. Until next time, go Noles.
We'll put a bow on this thing with a couple more details just to reset for those of you that are late here. Nearly 400 of you on Monday Smash on Warchant TV. Thank you for being here. Hit the like button. Subscribe to our channel. Absolutely free. And then use that bell. Do you want to know when we go live and be alerted when we bring you fresh content? Use the bell right next to the subscribe button. You can do that all free here at warchant.com and Warchant TV. The good news also is we have a spring special. I'm going to change something up on everybody. It's going to look like it's the JCS, but it's not. Fear not. But I want to bring this special to your attention, and here it is. Spring football special, $10 for just for more than 4 months of coverage, just $10, Warchant and On3. Here's what you get, everybody. Spring football coverage from now through the game. Spring and summer recruiting. They've got a junior day coming up this weekend, does the Florida State staff. They're making some waves in the high school recruiting world, everybody. Maybe a top 10 consensus class is not out of the realm of possibility. You want inside coverage on that? Sign up at warchant.com. Full baseball coverage all the way, hopefully, to a regional, a super regional, and beyond for baseball. It's been an interesting first season under Link Jarrett. And then even better, you get access to all of the On3 sites with their local experts. Want to check in on what's going on with LSU spring football? You can do it. $10 for 4 months. LSU, Clemson, all around the ACC. You want to take a look at the message boards and watch as Florida fans freak out. All of these things are at your disposal if you join warchant.com. $10 for just, these next 4 months of exceptional coverage. Also, we have another special where you can get through a $29.99 through August 31st, and that's all of fall camp as well. You're watching live footage of today's spring practice. Number 1 is in the books. The pads go on Friday for the first time. They practice this week today. That's done Wednesday, 4 p.m. stretch. You get to hear from Coach Norvell and players at 6:30 on Wednesday, and then they begin at 3 p.m. on Friday with a 5:15 availability. We'll hear from the head coach at that point. So it has begun, And if you're late to the party, this is an on-demand video. You could just scroll back in the DVR to get the reports from our own Ira Schoffel, the managing editor. And then we had an extended conversation with Jeff Cameron. But before we sign off, to get you up to date, 5 Seminoles will miss this spring. Offensive lineman Robert Scott, wide receiver Micah Pittman, interior defensive lineman Malcolm Ray, slot corner / defensive back Kevin Noles, and defensive end Aaron Hester. That's as many as 3 starters based upon last year's reps and last year's depth chart missing spring. It's not the end of the world, but it opens up competition for FSU moving forward, and that's something we'll be covering in depth at Warchant.com and WarchantTV. So to recap, don't leave the channel. This video is about to end, but we've got this practice footage, over 13 minutes of it. Aslan Hajavandi did a wonderful job shooting practice today. It's something you can expect at Warchant.com, that we will have this type of access for you. We've got player interviews with Jordan Travis, Trey Benson, Jared Verse. We've got the press conference with head coach Mike Norvell, and we've got a reaction stand-up video with our own Jeff Cameron and Corey Clark, who you did not hear from. So if you want to hear hardcore thoughts on the first day of practice, you can do that now at Warchant TV. We will be live tomorrow at 1 p.m. with Seminole headlines. Wake Up Warchant every day this week, so you'll have that as you start your day, whether it's on your podcast feed or here on Warchant TV. My God, we've got you covered, everybody. Observations, too, coming to Warchant.com as well. $10 for 4 months. Sign up now. What are you waiting on? Thank you so much for being a part of the broadcast. To the 300+ of you, throw a like as we exit this video. Subscribe if you haven't yet. And we will talk to you next time on Warchant TV. Good night, everybody.